all of these examples, Madonna, Robert Mapplethorpe, Batman, Prince doing the Batman soundtrack, Queen Latifah, Janet Jackson, there's so much about these things which have been sources of persecution. What if we took the armor and the hardness from them and made something new out of them? Hello, star children, sex symbols, immortals, crystalline beings of the netherworld. This is your Dark Master, David Odyssey. Welcome back. I'm so excited that you're going on this ride with me, and trust me, this is truly just the beginning. So, this is going to be a specific episode that is tied to something going on in the world. I wanted to kind of give you a little picture about like the language we're speaking here and about what it means to be observing things that are going on with planets and why should you basically give a shit. In my hands, I have this book. If you are watching or listening, it is called Cosmos and Psyche, Intimations of a New Worldview. It is by Richard Tarnas, who is the author of The Passion of the Western Mind. This is the book that I would say made me an astrologer. It was given to me by two dear friends, and I devoured it whole while sick in bed. The idea of this book is, what if we observed human history using the planets and their movements as archetypes? So it's about astrology not in the personal, I'm a Taurus, I'm attracted to Scorpios. It's a bit more, okay, at these different moments in history, where were the planets? And what if we could observe, oh, it's interesting, Pluto and Uranus, two really big planets, were opposed during the Spartacus Revolution and during the French Revolution or whatever. What do those synchronicities and correspondences mean? After I read that book, I felt like I was starting to really see the world differently because as I was learning what each planet kind of stood for, once I was seeing where the planets were going and how the planets were interacting with one another, I could really, I get an idea of what the themes are for this moment in time. You know, a lot of people, I think, when I tell them I'm an astrologer, or I read tarot or whatever, they really think that it's just about me telling you your future, and it's never that. I don't know your future. I don't really want to know your future. It's a bit more, let's look at the larger themes and kind of see where the ship is and maybe where it's headed. I bring all that up because often you will hear about these big conjunctions that are really exciting just astronomically, which is like, oh, once every few decades, two planets will meet up in the heavens in the same point. That's called a conjunction. Astrologically, we know that those usually represent some epic moment where things are converging thematically and we get kind of like a crystal clear either assignment or convergence of these cultural, political, emotional forces. So the big one, and that is kind of our topic this week, is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which will be happening on February 20th. Saturn and Neptune have not been exactly conjunct or aligned. The two planets are right on top of each other in the same sign. They have not been conjunct since 1989, where they were in a triple conjunction with Uranus in the sign Capricorn. So let me break down who, what, where, and then I'll start talking a little bit about the thematic significance, and then I'll talk about what was going on in that 1989 edition that, gives us insight, and what does this mean for you personally? Like, what the fuck are you supposed to do with all this information? So Saturn and Neptune are two of the big planets. They're two of the dark big planets. All planets are big, but they're further out from the sun. They have a slower orbit, which means that Saturn takes about 30 years to make a full revolution. Neptune, like over a century to make a full revolution. So as they're moving through each sign, their effects are really felt in a big way, kind of for the whole human race. They're felt very personally. You can see where those planets are for you in your chart right now. But we're observing, oh, wow, look at these bigger cultural or collective shifts that happen as these signs move. And when the signs hit each other, not the signs, when the planets hit each other, they're bringing these sort of forces together. And in whatever sign they're hitting, it gives us kind of the themes or the essential elements. Saturn is I always say it's like the Terminator of astrology. It's the like metal iron. It's kind of like the sensei that you see in any training montage of a movie. It represents kind of like your sobriety coach or like your personal trainer or your accountant or your hard-ass teacher. It is this force that has come to show us where we are not meeting the standard, where we are failing, what is not working. That's kind of Saturn's gig. Saturn, as it's moving through the signs for like the human race, is really spelling out these like bigger struggles that we're trying to face, like these bigger challenges that we're reckoning with. Okay. So Saturn is this sort of master of authority. It's very thematically like boss, daddy. Okay. Then comes Neptune. Neptune is the god of the ocean. Neptune is the god of horses. Do with that what you will. Neptune, dreams, imagination, higher collective consciousness, imagination, spirituality, psychedelia. Neptune is dealing with where is the consciousness or the collective soul or imagination. On a personal level, Neptune is showing us what is our spiritual or creative kind of zone or place or world. That's amazing. But Neptune also, if Saturn is the accountability coach, Neptune is revealing to us where we have no accountability and no sobriety. So Neptune will really tell us like, oh girl, this is your addiction. Neptune, wherever it's going for the world, whichever sign it's in, Neptune is going to reveal a lot to us about the texture of our collective imagination. How is art or spirituality, what shape or what form or what medium is it working through to get to the people? Because, that just is something, if you look through the decades, it does change. And often we mourn like, wow, this art form used to be dominant, but now it's this art form, or this new technology is supplanting this last technology. For Neptune, it's all about this is how we're reaching the people. Neptune will also reveal to us what are our collective weaknesses or addictions. Okay. Neptune and Saturn have both been in Pisces. Neptune's been in Pisces since around 2010. Saturn's been in Pisces since about 2022, 2023. Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. In Neptune and Pisces, in Pisces, Pisces deals a lot with healing, recrimination, closure, looking back, reckoning, dealing. I think you know what I mean when I say we've been doing a lot of that these past few years. I think the dark side of that is this addiction to nostalgia. I think the useful to a point, very useful and very necessary and constructive to a point side of that is what is the new accountability that needs to be taken for what's happened in the past. Lovely. Both signs are entering Aries. They are restarting the zodiac. They are starting new cycles. For Saturn, this will be a new 30-year cycle. For Neptune, this will be a new 100-plus year cycle. So it's really a time of new beginnings. We're really seeing a new era of optimism and also probably creation, destruction, violence, conflagration, fine. But one way or the other, we are stepping into a new thing. On February 20th, these planets will be exactly right on top of each other in Aries. They, to be clear, from June 29th through August 1st of 2025, they were half a degree away apart from each other. And I would say from February 15th through about March 10th, they're going to be within a degree of each other. When I say a degree, that means those planets are right there. The 20th, they are in exact, like, right shablam. You could point an arrow and you'd hit both planets. I mean, it would have to be a huge arrow, but you get what I'm saying, right? When they're in exact alignment, those planets come into, it's not a collision. It's kind of like an orgasm. Like, these two very different forces are these forces that are operating in the larger culture and the larger consciousness around us, but also within us, are coalescing. And it's not even just that day. The effects of that are really felt, I would say, for the whole year, but also for the whole era. They're really spelling out the kind of bigger direction that things might be taking, personally and collectively. So I am going to be kind of like explaining what that means to you, but the first thing to think about is this. While these planets have been in Pisces, Pisces deals a lot with, look, you know, I've said this before, Pisces is the sign of Jesus and Judas. And if you know, I love Jesus Christ Superstar, and like, there's the song, Look at All My Trials and Tribulations. Pisces is so much about look at what has happened. Look at what has happened good, that's the nostalgia. Look at what has happened bad. That is the recrimination, reckoning, and sometimes martyrdom. I think we can personally all say, like, these are the places where I have been a bit of a martyr to my past, to what I've inherited. We did a lot of healing and reckoning these last few years. Great. Now we are in a new phase. Aries not only starts the zodiac, but Aries is so much about like the hero, the protagonist, the one. Aries is the sign of the individual or the one. Aries deals with the protagonist, and if you then think about the protagonist, there has to be a villain. So we're now entering this active phase where each of us is going to kind of have to accept the way that things are or the way that things have been and accept our part in it. I think the dark side of Pisces is saying, I'm only going to be in the martyrdom and the grievance and ... the victimhood. I'm not saying that people who have been victims or who have suffered or endured horrible things or who are demanding justice are playing that role. But I'm saying on an interpersonal level, there's a shift from we need to look back and deal to the train is leaving the station. As these planets are entering Aries, we all kind of are going to have to, it's tricky because there is a bit of a sense of accepting, like, this is me, this is my life, this is not perfect, but I can do my thing in it. And what out of all of this that's imperfect can I make? And what do I want to make? And what shape do I want to take? And what form? So there is, and this is the thing with toxic protagonism, is like, and this is the thing with any good villain too. It's like, no hero is so pure. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's kind of coming up. We're all going to be taking a bit more of an active role, and the world is going into a more active place, and battle lines are kind of being drawn. And that is not necessarily going to be so nice and clean. But I think what's going on here is a bit of a like, all right, well, I have to accept who I am at this point and go from there. Saturn and Neptune. Saturn, like I said, is about like hyper accountability, and Neptune is about this sort of like imaginativeness. And when they're melding, we're getting to create the new form and imbue it with that sort of essence of the dream or the heart's desire. Okay. What's really now, this is when it gets interesting. I'm going to be bringing up some references of what happened the last time this happened to kind of paint a picture of what I think the bigger theme is here. Like I said, Saturn is about like authority and like the armor. Neptune is about like erosion and like the dams bursting forth. And when they come together, we have some like it's pretty trippy. So listen to this. The last edition was in 1999, which coincided with the fall of the Soviet Union. And by the way, there was a 1917 Saturn-Neptune conjunction that coincided with the Russian Revolution. I mean, I don't really... Do you need me to talk about like why shit with Russia is probably super relevant in 2026? No, we can assume there's going to be more things happening with Russia this year, dot, dot, dot. But more than that, if we look at the Russian Revolution and if we look at the fall of the Soviet Revolution, if we look at the fall of the Soviet Union, they are these huge breaking of the dam moments. They are these huge liberatory moments. I think they both have, in retrospect, a deeper ambivalence to them where we're like, oh, these didn't lead to the sort of like epic freedom that we thought they would. But if you think of the Berlin Wall coming down, and if you think about the Russian Revolution, they really were these society-wide, the whole world is watching moments where the structure is being, the dam, Neptune, the water, is breaking the dam, the wall, Saturn. So I just think generally speaking, like if we think really big with 2026, I have to say this too, the launch of the Civil War also came during one of these Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. So 2026, we're already looking at these huge, messy, but liberatory, one way or the other, breakings of the dam. So that's already a big thing just to think about, because we're really thinking about like, okay, things don't have to keep going the way they've been going, and there are going to start being really huge changes. It's not to say that every one of those, that we're so naive to think that every one of those changes is like perfect and amazing. But I think that imagery of walls coming down, I mean, it's crazy to think about the Cold War ending in 1989 because it really had been definitive and stagnant for so long. And it ended, it ended in a non-martial way. It ended in this really like beautiful liberatory way. So I wanted to point that out. Where it gets even more interesting is this. Like I said, Saturn is so much about authority. And if you think about authority, you're really thinking about like institutions, right? You're thinking about like the system through which the master operates. That can be the church, that can be the factory. Neptune is then the imaginative element. Neptune is the creative essence that is kind of in a dance with that authority. So beyond just these forces of liberation, this conjunction is really pointing us to this sort of dance between these two elements. Why is that interesting or relevant, and what does that mean for you? I think it's one thing to be a part of these liberatory currents. I think what gets complicated and what's the interesting assignment of this era we're about to enter, we've all identified what's wrong with the world. We have over the last, let's just say over the last 10 or 15 years, look how much we've identified about economy, sexual abuse, religious or racial persecution. We are not blind anymore. We are aware of these things. But in order to engage or like fight the good fight, we will all have to kind of get in the mess. It's not enough to be standing on the outside observing. It's not enough to be standing on the outside and critiquing. We will each have to kind of deal with the thing, go into the factory, or go into the chambers and engage there. Like I said, Aries is the protagonist. Aries deals with conflict or adventure. And you have to go to the Emperor's spaceship to face Darth Vader. You can't really just comment on Darth Vader. You have to engage. And I think a lot of what's going on now is, what does that look like? What does that messiness look like? So I wanted to bring up some of the kind of big events that I found interesting from 1989. So listen to this. 1989 gave us All Hail the Queen, which was Queen Latifah's kind of huge debut album. All Hail the Queen is amazing. Queen Latifah, fuck, I love Queen Latifah. Listen, I have issues with some of the casting in the Chicago movie. I think that Renee Zellweger and Richard Gere are not quite up to, if you listen to the original Broadway cast recording, you're just like, wow, Gwen Verdon, Jerry Orbach, this is it. And I don't think that they could take it. That said, obviously Catherine Zeta-Jones, performance of a lifetime. And on the album for Chicago, the movie, we get Class as sung by Queen Latifah, Mama Morton, and Catherine Zeta-Jones. And it's quite legendary. Anyways, I love Queen Latifah. I think she's a real one. As my friend Tommy once said, she's one of us. She's family. Okay. Queen Latifah gave us her album, All Hail the Queen. And if you watch the Ladies First music video, and even if you look at the album cover, it's Queen Latifah doing, I guess what I would call this, I would call it like dictator chic. She's bringing in these sort of costume designs and elements of African sovereign nations and their rulers as a Black, we can say it now, queer woman in America. And she does this really amazing dance, which is like rap that is imbued with this style of her wearing like a beret and pointing at maps of Africa. It's fabulous. Then 1989, I mean, I'm going to get emotional talking about this, but we get one of the definitive kind of artistic statements by the way, Queen Latifah is a Pisces. My fellow Taurus, Janet Jackson, gives us Rhythm Nation, 1814. Rhythm Nation, first of all, Janet Jackson really does not get credit, period. But Janet Jackson really took a lot of these styles and modes of dance and expression that were out in the world and in the neighborhood, and she really brought them to the forefront, non-exploitatively. Rhythm Nation is just, if you watch that music video, if you look at the costume design, if you look at the form of dance, it's about authority. That video is set in like a factory. And, the opening of Rhythm Nation, the song is, "We are a nation with no geographic boundaries, bound together through our beliefs. We are like-minded individuals sharing a common vision, pushing for a world rid of color lines." I'm bringing these two albums up because they're political. They have these silhouettes in terms of the fashion that is very much militaristic, but they're about feminism, unity, liberation, kind of fabulousness. So again, we're seeing this sort of imperial authority chic. Okay. We then get Tim Burton's Batman, starring Michael Keaton. Tim Burton and Michael Keaton are Virgos. My beloved Kim Basinger and Jack Nicholson, who plays Vicky Vale and the Joker, respectively, are Taurians. We get Batman. Prince does the soundtrack for Batman. Batman is pretty wild. If this is, I know that people think of superhero movies in this sort of like post Marvel Studios, like chipper, they all look the same. The Batman movies have always had a different visual language, but really starting with Batman by Tim Burton, he's bringing in these sort of fetish costumes. It's this sort of Batman is dressed like it's like a Roman centurion going to Berghain. And Batman himself is really fearsome and larger than life and terrifying. Meanwhile, Michael Keaton is this kind of beautiful, confused little boy. And Jack Nicholson is this kind of like art terrorist. So again, we're getting Tim Burton bringing in this sort of dungeon fetish sensibility to the superhero genre, and we are rooting for this hero who is this sort of authoritarian overlord, who is in reality this like very sensitive, aloof little boy. Do you get what I'm saying? Like we're really seeing this sort of dance. It can't just be I'm a sensitive baby. I want to think about my feelings and cry. We're already seeing these sort of vehicles or these armors through which we're accessing the conflict of the world we're in. Janet Jackson, Queen Latifah are really saying these are the political, socioeconomic, racial struggles. How do I, as an artist, in my voice, play with it by taking the look or the aesthetic and kind of remaking it as my own? So it's not about I'm not a part of these systems. I'm away from them. It's saying inevitably we're all affected by these things. Let's fashion our own epaulets and like play with them. I think this is really important when you're thinking about taboo and when you're thinking about things that are unspeakable or maybe cancelable. There's something creative about then, and this is what drag should do, taking these things and remaking them and rebuilding them. And I think in these cases, themes of war or conflict are being remolded. War, conflict, authority, governance are getting played with and remolded. And then, of course, we have to talk about 1989 gave us Like a Prayer by Madonna. Okay? I'll just say it now. 1989 is also the year when Robert Mapplethorpe, the great artist and photographer, died. As an aside, if you watch the HBO Robert Mapplethorpe documentary, the Fran Lebowitz scene, I have watched that 100 times. I think it is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Fran Lebowitz, they're showing like Robert Mapplethorpe's art pieces now going to auction for, like $100,000 per photograph, whatever. And then Fran Lebowitz is like, oh yeah, he was always giving me his collages. And they say like, well, what did you do with them? And she's like, oh, I threw them out when I moved. She goes, I threw them out, all of them, when I moved. She said she couldn't even close the lid on the trash can. There were so many. It's so good because, yeah, Fran Lebowitz in the early 80s didn't know that Robert Mapplethorpe would become what he became. I'm bringing up Robert Mapplethorpe to go with Robert Mapplethorpe's death because Robert Mapplethorpe, like Madonna, was so inspired by these themes of his childhood and Catholicism. And it's interesting because in the Mapplethorpe documentary, they talk with his childhood priest who kind of like loves everything Mapplethorpe did because his priest understands he took the themes of Catholicism and he took them to heretical places and he fucked with them and blah, blah, blah. But it was still him loving the cross, Like a Prayer is Madonna being sexual and kind of being this like modern Mary Magdalene, blah, blah, blah. But the themes of Catholicism are kind of adored. You know what I mean? It's not just saying like, oh, religion bad, I'm not engaging with it at all. It's these artists are saying Catholicism, which is this fucked up, crazy, dominant dominating force in my life. What if I played with the themes aesthetically, spiritually, creatively, emotionally? And from that we get like a prayer. Papa don't preach. Come on. And with Robert Mapplethorpe's art too, it's like, I mean, I'm a Jew, so I'm like, yeah, my introduction to Catholicism was like a prayer and Robert Mapplethorpe, which I'm like, how lucky am I, right? And I'm not, again, it's not to say that an institution like the Catholic Church is like fun and fabulous, but rather than just saying like, oh, that's a thing, that's a system that's done bad, I'm not engaging with it at all. It's saying, look, this is the system, in their case, that's what they came up in. And it's going to be more interesting to dance with its themes or to reinterpret or to drag or dress up its themes in your expression, in your sexuality, to create something that's more, it creates a dialogue. You know what I mean? I think the issue with where we are now, not to sound like a cliched New York Times editorial, everything is a bit hermetically sealed right now, which means that there isn't enough dialogue. And I think the point of art or the point of collaging or the point of drag is taking the shit and just like getting your hands a little dirty and fucking with it. That's going to do more because then you can laugh at it, then you can play with it, then you can imbue new things with it. And again, even if you look at like Tim Burton's Batman, he's like, what if we took Batman had not been on screen since the Adam West show, which is also brilliant, but that show was really more campy. Tim Burton was saying, what if we made this relevant with my own sensibility? And what if we deal with the things that are going on in the 80s, which is like, this deep sense that the city is unsafe. The 80s were really talking about the idea of the cities. This is pre-Giuliani, pre-Disney. Okay. Anyway, so I'm bringing up these references. I hope you're seeing where I'm going with this. All of these examples, Madonna, Robert Mapplethorpe, Batman, Prince doing the Batman soundtrack, Queen Latifah, Janet Jackson, there's so much about these things which have been sources of persecution. What if we took the armor and the hardness from them and made something new out of them? So I wanted to point that out. Now, what does this mean for you personally? Archetypally, I think within all of us, there is the inner taskmaster, the inner kind of mean mommy, the inner like abusive, whatever, piano teacher, the inner father, blah, 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 blah. And then within all of us is the inner child. That can be very healthy because, listen, I'm a huge fan of IFS healing, inner family systems, which is so much about identifying your inner parts and then kind of like seeing that they're all being healed and heard. Sure. This is a coalescence of those forces. This is a union between, this is why I have these authority figures that have imbued my consciousness, that have inspired me or fucked me up. And these are those inner rebellious forces. If we align ourselves with one or the other, it's bad. We can't always be children in revolts, and we can't always be siding with the man and trying to be a grown-up. When Neptune and Saturn are together, they're melding those two. And it's a really beautiful dance. I mentioned earlier that these are happening as these two planets leave Pisces and enter Aries. I think what's useful about leaving Pisces, which deals a lot with, like I said, healing, processing, dealing, is there's a huge sense of kind of forgiveness. Again, it's saying, let's say you grew up in the Catholic Church and it fucked you up. It's not about I'm disavowing that and that's not a part of me and I'm forgetting that ever happened. It's about saying, okay, let's look at how this influenced me for the bad, for the good, creatively, whatever. Let's move that in. When we're looking at our pasts, it's about that. When we're looking at that, okay, this is the world I'm in. These are the things I do that I wish were different, but I'm a part of an imperfect system and I'm trying to work within it. Okay, what if I dealt with that or faced that with a sense of maybe imagination or curiosity or creativity rather than I'm fighting the man, I'm nothing like you. You know, inevitably we kind of have realized, well, we're all part of this bigger thing, right? So I think it's like a really beautiful opportunity at the end of this phase of healing to say, all right, I've recognized within me is the abuser, within me is the victim, within me is the authority, within me is the rebel. Let's let them all play around. And what if when I'm embracing the authority or when I'm embracing the responsible side or when I'm being square or working my day job, that's imbued with the spirit of the artist or the rebel? And what if when I'm in the rebellion or in the creativity or in the youth, I am kind of aware, like, all right, girl, this is informed by the system you're in. This is informed by the family you come from. We're all products of our parents. We're all products of our upbringing. We're all products of the system we're in. So I think there's something about it that really allows for the open awareness of imperfection and then saying like, all right, well, what the fuck do I want to do with that? This to me is about, like I said, there's something so much about Queen Latifah and Janet Jackson making these sort of artistic choices, or even just the aesthetic of Batman, the movie. What is the armor or the material through which you are going to be engaging with these imperfect aspects of the world or reality? That is, what is the style? What is the dress? What is the presentation? If your work leads you into maybe, this isn't a morally perfect corporation or place that I work in. How do I want to have fun with that? How do I want to deal with that? How do I want to fuck with that? If anyone I think who makes art or who's creative, there's always an aspect of selling out to the man. That's how it is. Okay. How do we want to play with that? How do we want to fuck with that? Anyone who's on social media, however beautiful your message is, the social media is owned by Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or Xi Jinping. So how do we want to fuck with that? I think it's not enough to say like, I'm nothing like the man, You can move to the forest and live in a shack, slay. But I think if you're in a bit more of these messier territories, what is the armor or the presentation or the drag that allows you to really fight the system, fuck with the system, transform the system, but also create something new and also kind of reflect and reverberate and satire? There's so much of that. So I think we all need to, you gotta engage with your inner piano teacher or your inner daddy to do that. I think that can be messy and scary because none of us wants to be the man. But what I think these examples are showing us, which is Madonna being like, let's go ham with my Catholic upbringing. Let's go fucking crucifix, and I'm going to make a classic. That is so much more fun than just like, I'm going to make sterile, meaningless, non-confrontational art. ... Okay. So I think the takeaways, if you think about February 20th, but even if you think about all of January, February, and even if you think about all of 2026, I think the meditation needs to be towards forgiving yourself. And when I say forgiving yourself, I mean, it's almost like past, present, future forgiving yourself, because inevitably we're all kind of a part of this fucked up shit. we all have a part to play, I think, in changing it, making it better, fighting for those who can't fight for themselves, breaking the order, breaking the system, all of that. Listen, I just gave my friend my copy of Sarah Schulman's Gentrification of the Mind to read, so I'm with you. But I think we all have to forgive ourselves as like, inevitably, none of us, because of the world we live in, because of what we grew up in, because of how we're conditioned, because of how unfair things are, none of us can be an angel. And I think the assignment now is, all right, if we can just accept that and just be like, all right, listen, I'm just going to have to like deal with the fact that this is where I work, this is what I do, this is how I have food delivered to me, whatever. If we can accept that and just say, how do I want to deal within that? How do I want to play within that? How do I want to satire that? How do I want to challenge that? Rather than saying, the only way that I can feel okay or good or forgive myself is to be perfect or be removed or to not make mistakes or to not be involved in something complicated. What if we just said, okay, I'm in it, and how do I deal with it? I'm in this family, how do I deal with it? How do I want to challenge it? I think that's a real invitation. So that's where I'm hoping we can kind of be with this conjunction. Let's see what form it takes, but I think it's more interesting. I really do, okay? I'm more curious about like, if the world is this fucked up, and it's probably about to get a lot worse, I think we're all aware of that. What do we do to deal? That isn't just listen to Fiona Apple and sit in the dark. What do we do to really play with this and get in it? And I think that's like the personal invitation of this. So I hope this was relevant for you. If you are thinking of other big cultural touchstones for you that relate to this from 1989 or from this year, from what's going on, if you're thinking about things that are happening for you personally, let me know. If you have questions, comments, let me know at ask@heavenlybodiespodcast.com. You can find me at davidodyssey.com. And I really hope that if this pod made you think of someone who you think would love it, that you will personally send it to them and tell them like, girl, you got to listen to him. And please share it on your networks, on your socials, et cetera, et cetera. And please like, rate, and review. It really does go a long way, especially because this is a brand new show. I really appreciate you. We will be back next week. And in case you didn't know, I have a lot more to say. So I will see you next Wednesday, and good luck, baby. Mwah. Thank you for listening. This podcast is part of Pride House Media, hosted by David Odyssey, and produced by Matthew Breen and Josh Rosenzweig, with original music composed by Nell Balaban. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and review. It really helps others discover the show. I'd love to get to know you, so email questions and visions to ask@heavenlybodiespodcast.com and book a reading with me at davidodyssey.com. Until our next trip, keep looking up.